Hey guys, my name is Wesley. I'm a reporter for the Hill.Times, and this is the Hot Take with Wesley, where we talk about all the international, domestic, and local news that you need to survive. Today, we'll be talking about Winter Storm Uri, the effects it's had on Texas and will continue to have in the next few years. That being said, here's the take. Now, first, let's get the news out of the way. Winter Storm Uri 2 weeks ago ravaged through Texas among many other states and left upwards 46,000 kilowatts of energy offline, leaving 4.5 million homes without power and dozens dead. Winter Storm Uri has merited a huge political response, and one of the most prominent examples being that of our governor, Greg Abbott, who sought to blame renewable sources of energy like wind turbines for the power outages throughout the state. The only problem is that this isn't exactly accurate. Only around 7% of our energy in Texas comes from renewable sources of energy, whereas upwards of 80% comes from thermal sources of energy, which includes fossil fuels and, to a limited degree, nuclear energy. So it wasn't an over-reliance on renewable energies that caused these power outages, but instead an over-reliance on fossil fuels that weren't weatherized. And to understand why these sources of energy weren't weatherized or built to be immune from these cold conditions, it's important to look at the context of energy holistically within Texas. Now, in the United States, there's three main power grids, and that's the East Grid, the West Grid, and ERCOT, or the Electric Reliability Council of Texas. Texas has its own unique power grid, and that means that it's immune from a lot of the regulation and oversight that other states face. And that means that it wasn't really forced to weatherize any of its versions of energy. In fact, why would it? Texas is typically a hot and humid place that doesn't see winter storms like this. Until now. And unfortunately, this sort of deregulation has been a common issue within Texas, with former Governor Rick Perry even going as far as to say that many Texans would rather go days without electricity than face federal oversight, something that many Texans saw as out of touch. I guess you can say things like that when you're no longer the governor. But it's important not just to look at the reactions of our current and former governor, but also our current Senator Ted Cruz. Now, Ted Cruz got a lot of flack over the weekend when he decided to go to Cancun instead of stay in Texas during the storms. And at worst, this seemed callous and cold-hearted given that he went to a hot Mexico while people were literally freezing to death here in Texas. But there are some real consequences of his actions, first of which being that the pandemic is still an issue, and that the fact that he's going to Mexico during a global pandemic should be condemned in its own right. But secondly, he could have been doing more in Texas that he wasn't doing in Cancun. First, he could have used his status as a senator to get more national attention, to get things like FEMA and get attention and assistance to Texans. And to his credit, FEMA did end up presenting some help to Texas, but millions are still going without disaster aid here in Texas, and that's something that he should be advocating, or should have been advocating for. But additionally, he could have just stayed in Texas to do any sort of help. Plain old constituent work, plain old volunteering could have gone a long way to helping people who needed the aid. Something that he didn't even think about presenting. The Winter Storm Uri shows that when it comes to leadership in Texas, there's a lot to be desired. But fortunately, the 2022 midterm elections are coming up, which means that, among other people, Greg Abbott, our current governor, are up for re-election. And that means that the political consequences of this response to Winter Storm Uri is all up to Texans in the coming few years.